Deep in the heart of Southeast Asia lies a city that's incredibly peculiar. Enormous, empty roads and massive deserted temples. It's 4 times the size of London and 6 times the size of New York. But strangely, it seems nobody resides here. Today, we'll explore Naypyidaw, a city like no other. Get ready for an incredible video, because the more you learn about this place, the weirder the tale becomes. Welcome to Superstructures. Naypyidaw serves as the capital of Myanmar, which is a nation with 50 million people. You might remember the country by a different name, Burma, especially if you're familiar with its history before 1989. The renaming from Burma to Myanmar was controversial, with debates about the regime's authority to change it. However, the United Nations recognized the country as Myanmar, so we'll use that name as well. Naypyidaw covers an enormous area of about 7,000 square kilometers. For comparison, Shanghai is around the same size, but here's the striking difference. Shanghai is home to a whopping 26 million people, while Naypyidaw has less than a million residents. This stark contrast creates an eerie atmosphere, making Naypyidaw seem like a massive ghost city, almost like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. The roads, despite their grandeur, are often empty, with the occasional truck passing through. The parks, gardens, malls, golf courses, zoos, and even the city's most famous landmark, the Etat Pagoda, are all strangely deserted. Naypyidaw's airport is built to accommodate several million passengers, but even on its busiest days, you'll hardly find more than a couple hundred travelers. The city boasts numerous extravagant luxury hotels, with empty pools and countless unused rooms. It's quite a contrast, though, between Naypyidaw and a post-apocalyptic city. What sets this capital apart is its pristine upkeep, thanks to an army of diligent workers. This goes for the shops as well. A visit by 2 journalists from The Guardian in 2015 highlighted this oddity, describing a jewelry store bustling with dozens of employees but entirely devoid of customers, creating an eerie silence. The population has increased a bit since 2015, but it's still strange to think about, and there's more to uncover about this peculiar capital. You'll likely encounter some people around the parliament, a massive complex of lavish, identical-looking structures protected by fences and moats. Getting close to this compound is difficult due to the soldiers posted all around it, although it's puzzling who they're supposed to stop when there's hardly anyone else around. There are rumors that these highly secure buildings are connected to an underground tunnel network stretching beneath the city, supposedly designed with the assistance of North Korean technicians. While these rumors are nearly impossible to confirm, given how strange Naypyidaw is, it wouldn't be much of a shock. Besides the ministry zone, the city also encompasses a military zone, a hotel zone, a residential zone, and several others. In the residential zone, you'll notice that the roofs of the buildings have color codes that correspond to the occupations of their inhabitants. Blue roofs signify residents working for the Ministry of Health, while green roofs indicate Ministry of Agriculture workers. However, most of these homes remain unoccupied. The city zones are vast, unwieldy, and chaotic. They lack a logical structure or organization, giving the impression that these different areas were haphazardly pieced together without much thought. Finding a city center in Naypyidaw is virtually impossible. It feels like navigating through a bewildering maze. The road layout doesn't make things any easier. It's peculiar and challenging to navigate. Take the 20-lane highway within the ministry zone, for example, which oddly links up with a significantly smaller road. If this road were genuinely filled with 20 lanes of traffic, it would undoubtedly lead to an immediate traffic jam. The city's planning simply lacks coherence. There are roundabouts mind-bogglingly vast and peculiar, unlike any roundabouts you'll find anywhere else globally. Fortunately, these roads aren't teeming with cars, as these roundabouts would undoubtedly be jammed with gridlock. Further east, there's another massive 16-lane highway stretching for miles, running almost perfectly straight. When viewed from above, it oddly resembles an airplane runway. While this might be a coincidence, it's intriguingly situated right between a military base and the military zone. However, driving on some of these roads can be quite treacherous. There's a stretch of highway heading south from Naypyidaw, known as Death Highway. This road has been plagued by fatal accidents since its opening in 2010. Alongside Death Highway, there's an infamous sign that reads, "Life is a journey. Complete it." Curiously written in English. Is it a warning or a dark joke? For some drivers, this sign becomes the last thing they see before a crash. Other peculiar details can be found in Naypyidaw, such as the Upatasanti Pagoda. This structure appears impressive but is essentially a copy of a building in the old capital, Yangon. Although the pagoda is intended as a Buddhist monument, when it was officially inaugurated, no monks were permitted near it, only politicians and military leaders. Everywhere you look in Myanmar's capital, there are perplexing things that just don't seem to add up. All of this leaves us wondering why Naypyidaw was constructed in the first place. The city's origins date back 20 years when it was built by the same controversial military dictatorship that changed Burma to Myanmar. To say this regime was controversial is an understatement. It was a violent and deeply unpopular regime. In the 1960s, when the regime seized power through a military coup, students protested at Yangon University. The regime's response was sending in a battalion of soldiers. And while the exact death toll is unknown, it's clear that hundreds of students were shot. The military dictatorship consistently refused to hold elections until 1990. And even then, the election results were ignored. When the military only won 10 of the 492 available seats, they canceled the election and detained opposition politicians. This paints a grim picture of the regime, a brutal, violent dictatorship. And these are the same individuals who ordered the construction of Naypyidaw. The exact start date of this construction remains a military secret, but satellite images suggest it commenced around 2002. The city was unveiled 3 years later, accompanied by the name Naypyidaw, which loosely translates to Home of Kings. Clearly, these military leaders held themselves in high regard. The entire project to build the city cost around $4 billion. While this figure might seem lower than expected for a city of this magnitude, it was still a significant amount for a country with a GDP of less than $10 billion at the time. Indeed, there were far better ways to utilize that substantial amount of money. Many parts of Myanmar were grappling with poverty and lacked access to basic necessities such as education and healthcare. The need for such resources was dire, but the military regime seemed indifferent to these concerns. What makes the situation even more disheartening is that the city has now turned into a bizarre ghost megacity. It's not just a matter of spending a lot of money. It's about wasting a tremendous amount of money. However, if you think this narrative is peculiar already, prepare for an even stranger twist in the story. Yangon, a coastal city, served as Myanmar's capital before. It was a bustling metropolis home to over 7 million residents, and it had been Myanmar's capital since 1852 during the British Empire's rule. However, more than 150 years later, Myanmar's dictatorship decided to relocate the capital. The official explanation was quite straightforward. Yangon was too overcrowded, and its infrastructure couldn't keep up with a growing population. The regime aimed to establish a new city with ample space and better urban planning. But was this official explanation the real reason behind the construction of Naypyidaw? Many people doubt it and believe the actual truth is much more peculiar. Most experts believe that the military regime was deeply concerned about Yangon's increasingly congested population. They feared that if a large-scale uprising erupted in the city, it would be challenging to control and defend against so many civilians simultaneously. The student protests at Yangon University were not the only demonstrations they had to contend with, and it seemed like only a matter of time before one of these protests escalated into something more significant. Additionally, the regime was allegedly worried about the possibility of a naval attack by the United States of America coming from the Bay of Bengal. While this attack was unlikely, it wasn't entirely out of the question. The US government was not on good terms with the regime, and they continued to refer to the country as Burma instead of accepting the new name Myanmar. The United States had also previously intervened in Southeast Asia, most notably during the Vietnam War. In response to these concerns, the military regime made the decision to relocate the capital to a secluded inland region. Here, it would be far less susceptible to popular uprisings and significantly more challenging for the United States to launch an attack. The military strategically positioned their new city between two mountain ranges, the Bago Yoma and the Shan Yoma, which created natural defensive barriers. Deep within the city, they constructed a heavily guarded government complex with features like fences, soldiers, a river or moat, and those mysterious underground tunnels. It's possible, just maybe, they intentionally left the rest of the city relatively empty. By keeping the population sparse, they significantly reduced the risk of a popular uprising threatening the regime's hold on power. Even if the city slowly filled up with people over time, the wide roads would make it easy for the military to quell any protests. Some speculate that the 20-lane highways might serve as secret military runways. This would allow planes to touch down in various parts of the city, ready to respond to potential uprisings in a way that wouldn't have been possible on the narrow streets of Yangon. The theories and speculations continue. It's possible that the city's perplexing layout is meant to confound and hinder potential protesters, making it harder for them to navigate effectively. The immaculate streets might be intentionally kept clean to thwart protesters from easily constructing barricades. Even the infamous death highway between Yangon and Naypyidaw could be viewed as a calculated defensive measure. In essence, the entire city isn't just a city. It's a colossal military fortress, designed to maintain strict control and deter any potential challenges to the regime's power. To emphasize, none of these theories and speculations about the true motives behind Naypyidaw's creation have been officially confirmed by Myanmar's military dictatorship. The official explanation suggests they moved the capital for administrative purposes to alleviate traffic congestion in the overcrowded streets of Yangon. Why was Naypyidaw built? Was it a well-thought-out administrative solution? A fortress to protect against possible threats? Or something even more perplexing? We invite you to share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Superstructures. We'll see you in the next video.